What's up, friends? Nav back here with another video for you today, and I want to do my quarterfinals recap video, my semifinal recap video, and then the grand final prediction video here today. As I said in the live stream, I would do the quarterfinal predictions there, and I predicted those. And then what I said was that when the semifinals were figured out who was going to be playing who, I would tweet out the predictions, which I did. Go check the Twitter if you want to see what the predictions are, or you can just look right here because it says who I predicted. And then that I would make this video later tonight once the semifinals were over so that I could recap it all, because the way it was set up, I wasn't going to be able to make a video in between the quarterfinals and the semifinals. So this is just how I decided to do it. I realized afterwards I should have just predicted the quarterfinals, semifinals, and grand finals all in one go, but I didn't. So, whatever. That's unfortunate. But we're going to be doing that right now. So we're going to be recapping the quarters and the semis and then looking ahead to the grand finals. So let's get right into it. Overall record for the quarterfinals and the semifinals together was 4-2. I realize that some of you might be looking at this and thinking, well, that's dumb. You predicted FaZe to beat SK and they didn't. And then you have the prediction in the semifinals where SK, whatever. That's just how I did it. I didn't do it all in one shot. So take it for what it's worth. But 4-2 on the 2 days. Overall record right now sitting at 24-15, which I'm pretty proud about and pretty excited about. But looking into those matches, the first match we had was Navi and Astralis. A match that I predicted Navi to win, actually. Navi coming into this game was looking very solid and looked like they were the team to beat in this tournament, and that I thought for sure, they would win. And I didn't say this, but I thought for sure that they would win the whole tournament. I thought that they would beat Astralis and move on, beat whoever they played in the semifinals, move on to the finals, and then beat whoever they would play there. That's just sort of how I thought that their path would go. But they didn't. It didn't look like they showed up at all in this matchup. Even in the match that they won on Mirage, it looked very shaky for them. They needed a lot of clutch plays, a lot of unluckiness coming out of Astralis to even win that map. I mean, I'm thinking of specifically the Zipnix clutch, which which ended the game, gave Navi their 16th round. I mean, he had him dead to rights and just barely missed the spray. Unfortunately killed the guy that had the auto sniper, not the M4, and then the M4 guy traded him out right away. So if it was the other way around, maybe the auto sniper wouldn't have been a great weapon for that situation, and he would have survived then and taken it to overtime. Who knows? It took a lot of misfortune for Astralis for Navi to even win that Mirage game. And then on Dust 2 and Overpass, obviously Astralis, especially on Overpass, it was a washout on Overpass. Something that did not expect to happen, right? Because, like I said, coming into it, Navi looked great. They all throughout their group stages, they played very well. And Astralis, while they did play well, I didn't think that they would be able to stack up with Navi. I thought this was Navi's tournament and that they would take it. But Astralis showed up and played very well. Even the Mirage game, like we talked about, the Mirage game that they lost, they really got unlucky is what happened. Yes, they made mistakes other than those few key rounds to let Navi in the game and to get that close to winning anyway. But, unlucky for Astralis to lose that Mirage game. Then they came back on Dust and really showed Navi what was up in the second half, especially. Excuse me. So, great game for Astralis, not so good for Navi. Hopefully Navi can come back in the next major and play a little bit better and be able to advance farther. But unfortunate that this was a quarterfinal matchup. This was a matchup where, looking at it on paper especially, you say this should be a grand final matchup without a doubt. But it was a semifinal matchup, obviously due to the fact that Astralis lost and that they came back in later. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. It was a great match to watch. The thing I was very surprised about was Simple and his play. Simple is a guy that you seem to think is going to be, one of these exciting fraggers that does well and gets these high impact kills. He really didn't seem to show up at all in this tournament. Now, if we look at the KDs here overall, you can tell just looking at this who won the match. Astralis just played much better than Navi did individually, and then that transferred over to the team play as well. And we look at Device. Device had a great series. He had a great, I forget what game it was that he played just out of his mind crazy. He had a great series. So did Caribbean. Glaive was making excellent calls throughout, and I think that trio right there really cemented the win for Astralis. The high impact frags that they were getting, the clutch rounds that they were winning. It was just a really solid team effort on their part. So they moved on past Navi. Unfortunate for Navi, but hopefully next major they can come back a little bit stronger. Next matchup was Fnatic versus Gambit. And I think when I predicted Fnatic, I think not I wasn't a super minority here, but I was pretty. I think I was definitely in the minority for people who thought Fnatic was going to beat Gambit. I just looked at this map and saw how Fnatic was playing and saw how Gambit was playing, and it just didn't seem like a match that Gambit was going to win. You know, Olaf and Krims were playing very well. They were sort of carrying their team to victory. And I said going into it, I said, if you have Olaf and Krims playing well, and then you have a guy like Twist or Disco, do well also, I said, you're really going to be able to propel yourself to the win. Now we look at this, and this is not typical of what we saw. Twist was the hard carry in this series. Olaf and Krims both went even throughout the series. Now, in the games that they won, now you have to take that into account. They had a 16-3 game on Overpass where Gambit beat them. So you got to think that those stats were dumped down a little bit because of that game. But, I mean, they didn't look nearly as impressive as they did in the group stages towards the end and at the beginning of this tournament. They just didn't look there. But luckily enough, they had Twist, who was just playing very well, had a great series overall, and was able to carry them to the victory. I said, looking at Gambit, I said you have to have Hobbit and Mo, however you want to say his name. I said you had to have these guys show up, and they did. They both played very well. But then the other thing I kept saying is that this tournament has been characterized by one or two players having a great game and then having that one player, that dud, that pulls them down. And we look at it in this series, it was Doja. He never was comfortable. It looked like he never really had a grasp of what was happening around him. That's not to say that he's like this player who's unobservant and doesn't know what's going on. He's a very intelligent player, but just this series did not look like he was comfortable in anything that was happening. And his play reflected, it really had a poor series and sort of brought the whole team down. Had he been able to do better, I think this series could have flipped on its head. We look at, Overpass, which was a 16-3 for Gambit. Obviously, they played very well. But in the other two games, 16-7s for Fnatic. It's kind of one-sided, especially in a major tournament like this. So, Fnatic took the victory, obviously. But, I think it could have been much different had a couple things changed. But, you can't look back at that and say, well, what if you're Gambit? You just have to look forward to the next major, practice, and hopefully you can come out on top. But very surprised that Fnatic was able to advance as far as they did in this tournament. I know a lot of people looked at this team coming in and said, this isn't a team that's going to do well. They're not a team that's going to certainly not make the playoffs. Maybe they'll get a win or two in the group stages, but certainly not make the playoffs. And here they are, made the playoffs, made it into the semifinals. That's big for them. So going forward, that's got to be a huge confidence boost for them, especially for Olaf and Krims and Dennis, who are reportedly, according to the rumors, supposedly staying with Fnatic, and then will be joined by JW and Flusha. Basically, Fnatic, except minus Pronax / whoever else they had, and then plus Dennis. So we'll see going forward how this affects them and how they play. But great series from Fnatic here. They were able to move on into the semifinals. The next matchup was Virtus Pro in North, and this was a crazy series. The first map started off with just a throbbing. That's just a throbbing. That's not a saying. What am I thinking? A VP thumped them on Overpass. It was 14-1 at the half. 14-1. Cajun B was like 0-14. That is unheard of. The fact that North was even able to get 4 rounds, I mean, they managed to get 3 in the second half. That's impressive for how that game was going. 16-4 is how we started it. Then we had 2 very close games to end it, and it was just insane. It was a great series to watch. The cash match, we're not going to talk about Overpass. Like I said, it was 14-1 first half. Cajun B was 0-14. I think there's another guy that was like 2-14 or 3-14, something like that. They just played horrendous in the first game. Cash was very close, had a couple clutch plays from both sides. North ended up pulling that one out. Watching it, you had to think that VP had it, or had a chance to win it anyway, but just a couple things didn't go their way. Couple bounces went North's way. They got some clutch kills, clutch rounds, able to pull that one out. And the Cobble is the one that I really want to talk about. Look at these 2 half stats. 30-12 in the first half for North. They had 12 rounds. VP had 3. 13-1 in the second half. VP got 13 rounds, North had 1. Cobblestone historically has been a T-sided map, right? Or excuse me, CT-sided map until they made the changes that they did and made it a little bit more T-sided. But North was completely shut down in their T half. We looked at Virtus Pro getting 3 rounds on the T side, very uncharacteristic of them, and you think that's not good enough. With how they've switched the map around, you got to think you got to be able to get more than 3 rounds on your T side. Old Cobblestone, when it originally came out, 3 rounds was like, that was pretty good for Cobblestone on the T side. Now you're looking to get like maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 rounds on your T side to be considered like to have a good T half. The fact that they got 3 was very scary. Going into the CT half, you had to think that they were taking it just 1 round at a time, 1 round at a time, 1 round at a time. Managed to get the pistol, got the 2 rounds after that. Then they got that next gun round, and suddenly it's 7-12. They have halved their deficit, and you think maybe this could happen, but of course no one wants to say cast or curse. You don't want to jinx it. As it kept going, their momentum kept going. They started hitting all their shots, and North really shut down in the second half. We look at Magisk. He was the story here, and just looking at these stats, he was the story of the series for North, and you gotta feel bad for the guy. So what happened was, in the first half of the Cobblestone game, Magisk had, what was the stat? Was it 20? Let's go to my Twitter. I know I favorited it. He had something like 26 kills, which was a record for, hey, come on, view profile. The amount of kills that he had in the first half was a record for a half in a major. Now the record for a half period is like 30 something. So he got 26, which was a record for a major. Let's see if I can find it. I know I read the tweet here somewhere. Let's see. Navi Astralis. That's not it. Okay, apparently I didn't save it. But yeah, so he had, I think I just saw it, whatever. He had 26, something like that, 26 kills in the first half of the major. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. 26 kills in the first half, record for the major. That's unimportant. The fact that he was unable, where'd it go? Virtus Pro North, there it is. Oh my God, I'm all over the place. His team really wasn't able to step up with him. It was sort of the Magisk show. Where he went, he got kills. The rest of the map was sort of shut down by Virtus Pro and everything they did. And he was able to really just single-handedly almost win them the entire series, which would have been crazy. Coming into the series, North looked terrible all tournament long. They did not look like they showed up whatsoever, and I thought this was going to be a wash for Virtus Pro. I thought it was going to be a 2-0. Easy. This last map was a crazy nail-biter. The fact that Virtus Pro was able to come back says something about them. Their experience, I think, is the big story of this second half. The experience versus the rookies. Virtus Pro has years of experience underneath them, coming from behind, playing with leads. They have just experience in general, whereas North doesn't have that. They're a very young team, which is good because then your stars will be around for years, but it's also bad in the fact that they didn't have that experience. So the fact that Virtus Pro had that and North didn't was telling of how the second half went. North just wasn't able to finish out the victory, which is something that they need to work on. That will come with time, but it was crazy to watch. One of the best comebacks I've ever seen, especially in a major, and Virtus Pro, you just got to think that was the propellant for them to get through this second half of that game and moving forward. So props to Virtus Pro, able to come back. Not a lot of teams would have been able to do that. Crazy series, crazy cobble game. If you didn't catch it, I strongly suggest going and taking a look at the VODs because it was really just a great series overall and a great final matchup to watch. So moving forward, the next quarterfinals game was FaZe SK, another match that I predicted probably in the minority for FaZe to win. I thought looking at SK, they didn't look solid coming in. They did have the stand-in Fox, which everyone keeps talking about, but I think he has proved himself in this tournament. Obviously they went out in the semis today, which we'll get to, but I think in their run in this tournament, Fox has proven himself as a player that can play at this high level, and that while SK wasn't their normal SK selves, the fact that they had a stand-in in Fox didn't really hinder them a whole lot. Yes, it altered their play style and sort of made Fallen seem a little uncomfortable, but I think generally speaking, it didn't change the way they played a ton. So it was a great match for FaZe. We see the first game on Mirage, FaZe dominated. I'm sorry, it was a great match for SK. First game Mirage, FaZe was dominant. 12 rounds on your T half is very, very solid for the team. They were just sort of controlling the pace, controlling everything. Mirage probably one of FaZe's best maps, so it's not quite surprising that they did this well. You would have thought SK would have put up a better fight. Not sure why they let it get to Mirage in the first place. They probably didn't want to play them on another map that SK was probably bad at. 16-7, first map of Mirage. The next two games is what we really want to look at. 8 rounds for FaZe combined in the final 2 maps. If you're Kerrigan calling that match for your team and you guys get 8 rounds, that's sad. You definitely, with how you played on the first map especially, you should have been able to get more than 8 rounds. Definitely should have been able to get a map win probably. But these maps that SK played, they just played phenomenally. Solid team play all around. And the thing about this year is that it progressed rather nicely for SK. So in the first map, now we should say all 3 maps, Fur was playing out of his mind. I mean, he had a great series. So first map, Fur's playing well. No one else is really stepping up and playing well at all. Second half, Train. The team itself played great. Fur kept his level up. Fallen joined him up there. Cold Zero joined him. Excuse me. And that was sort of like the game that sort of reset the series, right? Because 16-3 is a crazy match. You think, that might be the momentum swing that SK needs to propel them into Overpass, and I think that's exactly what happened. They took the momentum that they got from that Train map and moved it to Overpass, where they played well again. Again, Fur played out of his mind. Fallen was playing very well here too, and then they also had guys like Cold Zero and Taco helping out as well. It sort of just progressed rather nicely, where they started off kind of rusty, but you could see the wheels started turning as they got the momentum going. They were unable to stop in Overpass and Train especially. So great series from SK. Solid calling from Fallen after a rocky start. I was really glad to see him step up. And you look at this FaZe team, they performed well in this tournament. They really did. I would have thought, or at least hoped, that they would be able to take one of those maps. Not because I picked them, just because I thought after how they played on Mirage, I really thought it was over for SK. I thought FaZe was going to take it, but they just came out so flat in the next 2 games and just didn't get anything going. So you got to feel bad for them there, because they overall did have a great tournament. It was just sort of a sour end to it for them. But, when you're looking at the stats here, SK really just dominated them individually, team-wise. It was a great team effort from them. So SK move on. FaZe fell off. Unfortunate for FaZe, but I'm sure they'll be back. They have the legendary status, so all these teams are going to be back in the major, the very next one. So that's something that they can look at with solace going forward. So here we are at the first semifinal of the day, Astralis versus Fnatic. I thought that this map would not work out. When we looked at these maps, you look like, this isn't going to work out for Fnatic. Yes, they're great on cash. Dust 2 lends itself to being able to play individually, but, I thought Astralis coming in was just too good. I picked Astralis to beat Fnatic. They did 2-0. Nuke was a wash. It was one of those maps where I think Fnatic was trying to pull something pull a fast one over on Astralis, get a free map win, because I think they probably figured Astralis wasn't too great on Nuke, hadn't seen them play a whole lot of it. Didn't work out in their favor, obviously. 16-5, 12 rounds on the terrace side of Nuke is pretty solid if you're Astralis. So looking at cash, the overtime map, it looked like, and even though Astralis won this map, it looked very sketchy. I'm thinking the last round especially that they won to win the first map. It starts off with, I think it was Crims getting a random headshot on, I want to say Device, or maybe it wasn't Device. Someone from Astralis. He got a random headshot through Squeaky Door on A site, and that's how the round started. Then you had Dupree counter boosting over mid, coming up behind them, getting a double kill, and then Astralis had the 4-2 man advantage, and they almost let it slip away. It came down to a 1v2 where Caribou or Glaive, I think it was Caribou, was able to clutch the 1v2 because Device was missing shots. Glaive got caught out mid, Dupree got killed, and then it was down to Caribou in the 1v2, and he somehow runs out of vents, gets the guy not paying attention, and then kills the planter as well, or the guy that was on site. So just a very sketchy round overall, and that's sort of how the game went. As the game went on, there was a lot of moments where you thought, Astralis, what are you doing? Did you forget how to play CS? Now, granted, they did have great moments. Obviously they got the win, so, obviously they played well throughout most of the rounds, but it was just a little bit weird to watch in that first map. But the second map, like I said, nothing really to say there. Astralis just bested them, completely outclassed them. So, like we said, looked good for Fnatic coming into this tournament where no one thought they would do well. Now, if these trade rumors are true, where Flush and JW come back to Fnatic, the thing they have going for them is that they already have the legendary status. So they're not going to have to qualify for the next major. They're going to be able to focus all that time on just practicing and getting better as a team, getting that chemistry back up to where it was before they sort of split apart and going forward. But great showing in this tournament from Fnatic. Can't say it enough. Really, I think they surprised a lot of people with how they played and how well they were able to do as a team. But you saw once they came up against Astralis, like a really strong team here, their individual styles didn't really hold up against them, and they sort of crumbled, unfortunately. But I think we'll see a better Fnatic coming out in the next major, and I'm really excited just to see how they do. Final match of the day was Virtus Pro versus SK. I picked Virtus Pro to win this match, and they did, but in two incredibly close games. I think this was probably one of the best series of the tournament. You might look at Navi and Astralis, but even this, I don't think. I still think the SK Virtus Pro was a better series, even though it was a 2-0 instead of a 2-1. Just the way these teams were, they were both very, very even matchups. And the thing with this tournament was going in the group stages was all best of ones, and these teams had a lot more bans than they had for the playoffs here, because in the playoffs you ban one each, then you pick one, then I think you ban two more, and then the randomizer picks. I think that's how it works. I'm not positive. But so in the group stages, you ban, then one gets picked randomly. So it led itself to be having much more even games because you were able to ban out maps that you were bad at or maps the other team was good at. So a lot of the group stages were really, really even games. A lot went to overtime. There was not a lot of one-line scores. Well, in the playoffs here, when you're only able to ban one before the other team can pick one, if a team has two really good maps, you can only obviously ban one of those before the other team picks their crazy good one. So I think that's why we saw a lot of one-sided score lines here. But in this matchup, both were very close score lines, 19-17. Obviously, that one went to overtime. And then Cobblestone 16-14, as close as you can get without going to overtime. So just a solid series overall. Virtus Pro managed to squeak it out. They just had, a couple really key rounds that they won that SK just wasn't quite able to. Now, you can mark that up to the lack of chemistry that they might have had going forward, or just overall poor team play. But even looking at the stats, it was very even throughout. Even Taco and Fur, who, Fur, we looked at his first series of the day, had a crazy series, had a down series. Taco didn't do that well either. But even with those guys, still very close and just a great series to watch overall. One of those things where you watch it and you think, wow, these are like two of the best teams in CS, one of the most storied teams in CS. Crazy to see them going up against each other. Great matchup, really fun to watch. It was one of those matches that really made me appreciate being a Counter-Strike fan. So, looking ahead here. So I just exited out of that. I probably shouldn't have done that, but we went over the semifinals, went over the quarterfinals. Now looking ahead to the grand finals, Virtus Pro versus Astralis. Looking at this matchup, you want to look at least I prefer to look at the entire book of work coming into the grand finals, how they've progressed. And you really look at first at Virtus Pro, they played well throughout the entire tournament. Never really had too high of a high, never had too low of a low coming into this one. Sort of been very steady. Now Astralis, they had that rough first day, but I think that was a very fluky day for them. That was just everything went against them. And as they've gone throughout the tournament, they've proven that they've bounced back from that and have stepped their game up. And it seems like every match, every series that they've played a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And even the match that they lost yesterday against Navi in the Mirage map that they lost, they were still playing very well. They just had a couple unlucky breaks that we talked about. Because of that, because of how Astralis has sort of moved forward in this tournament and sort of progressed and gotten better, it seems that they're at the peak right now. Granted, Virtus Pro is too, but I'm going to take Astralis to win this matchup. It's a best of 3 match. I think they're both going to be able to pick their favorite maps, and depending on what the deciding match is, that might swing it. But I'm going to take Astralis here. I just think that as we've watched the tournament progress and as we've watched Astralis play, they've gotten better and better and better. And everyone says, oh, well, what if Device doesn't have that crazy carry game? Well, we haven't seen it so far because I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's put in so much work going into this game that I don't think that the map is going to come where Device isn't playing well, that he's missing all the shots, that he's not getting the kills. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Astralis just overall has better players, right now, if you want to look at it in their prime, you're gonna have to look at that in their prime, because Virtus Pro, when they were in their prime, it was crazy, right? But right now, Astralis, I think they have more fragging power. I think they have the better team play. I think Glaive's going to be the key here, right? Because when you think of in-game leaders, you don't think of someone that's going to go out and get those frags and going to, you know, help the team forward in that way. But Glaive is kind of a different in-game leader in that he's actually able to do that. He's able to make these mid-round calls, but at the same time go forth and get these entry frags, get these kills. I think if Glaive plays well, I think it's really going to help Astralis cement the victory there in my mind. And I'm just really looking forward to see how it plays out. Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it live just simply because of when it is. I have things going on. What I'm probably going to do is watch the VODs of it. I'm obviously going to know who's going to win, but I'm definitely going to watch the VODs before I make the video so that I can talk a little bit about how that final played out and what things were important, what surprised me, stuff like that. So we'll go forward from there, see what happens. But that's my prediction for the grand finals. I'm taking Astralis over Virtus Pro. Let me know what you guys think for the grand finals, who you're predicting to win. I just think Astralis is playing too well right now. I think they're gonna beat Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro has had some close games where they've had to clutch up. I think Astralis is going to be the team that's able to beat them in those clutch situations and just win the series outright. So that's my prediction. Again, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching these videos. I really have appreciated the feedback, and I will see you in the next video. I'm out. Peace.